You may have gotten in all the temple announcements and stuff that next Tuesday night we're having a Rosh Chodesh celebration at 7:30. The kickoff Rabbi Siegel will be doing a spiritual introduction to Rosh Chodesh, a little bit of prayer. So it'll be a little bit of prayer and a lot of networking. Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of the new Jewish month, and it's traditionally a Jewish women's celebration. And so, as Women of Jeremiah have tried different programming this year, we felt that connecting in the spiritual way would allow another means of connection for the Women of Jeremiah. So Rabbi Siegel will kick us off with a little bit of prayer, some conversation, and a lot of opportunity to connect with other women from Jeremiah. So, or any other women you want to bring with you. So please, I put it in my order. It's going to be 35 next Tuesday night. There's going to be no snow, so there's no reason that you can't come out. So we'll do it under the full moon outside. Yeah, wear your high boots and go. We did that actually a couple of summers ago. We did an evening outside to celebrate Rosh Chodesh. So please come. I think it will be a wonderful evening. We'll have refreshments. So come with yourself, come with your friends, get your kids fed, get your homework started, and come on out of the house. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start, since Rabbi comes down here, he's finishing up a meeting, he'll be in shortly. We'll do the Devar Torah once he gets here. So when Mitch and Diana and I were planning all of these agendas, we came to the part that's in your binder. I'm sure you've all looked through it, about how to run an effective meeting and some tools about what is a Jewish meeting. So she said, oh, Julie, you take that one. So I'm not sure exactly what she meant by that, but here's like my tips, I guess. I'm not going to read you what's in the binder. As always, feel free to peruse that at your leisure. But is there a difference between a regular business meeting that you all participate in and a Jewish meeting? And the answer is yes. So I guess here's some of my top tips for a successful meeting and for everyone that participates feels that it's beneficial. So most important, number one, feed them. So everything always goes better with food, and especially at a Jewish meeting. Number two, start with the Devar Torah. So this might be a little intimidating to some people who have never given a Devar Torah before. The Devar Torah is really just a way to get all the participants in the right mood to focus and facilitate whatever the subject of your meeting is. So it could be related to whatever that week's Parsha is, and there's many tools on the internet, starting with the URJ and with the URJ's website. They have lists of what this week's Torah portion are, and they have Devar Torahs and Parshas, which you can glean information from. It could be a poem, it could be a song, it could be a story related to whatever the topic is. So this is one way to kind of set the tone and set it apart from your daily business meetings. So we kind of made it a standard of practice, I guess, here at Jeremiah, that all of the meetings should start, whether at the committee level or at the board level, with the Devar Torah, which we will get to ours in a second. And there's information on this Devar Torah resources in the binder. Number three, send out meeting reminders and send out an agenda in advance so people come prepared to the meeting to discuss whatever your subject is about. And if there's something they need to think about or bring any data with them or whatever, they can come prepared. It makes it more efficient. Number four, stick to the time frame. Make sure you're really being mindful of people's time and commitment. Everyone's a volunteer. They are always rushing from one thing to the other, so staying within a time frame is most appreciated. I guess 5 is really providing stimulating dialogue and opportunities for people to voice their opinion. Most people don't want to come to a meeting and just listen to somebody talk the whole time. They want to be able to voice their own opinion. So giving time, I mean, a lot of times within a meeting you have to give information, but then there should be a portion or time within the meeting that you're really listening to whoever you invited to participate in the meeting. Number 6 I wrote is just thank everyone for participating. They are all volunteers and you're appreciative of their time. And people want to feel appreciated, so they want to know that they came, they did something meaningful, and someone's thankful that they were there. And then number 7 I wrote is just meeting follow-up, whether you're going to do meeting minutes or an email summary or some sort of follow-up so people either who weren't in attendance know what went on, but more importantly, the people who were there can kind of review and know what the next steps were. So that's my take on running an effective meeting. There's information in the book. I don't know if you have anything to add. Top 7. I didn't get to 10, but it was top 7 tips. So without further ado,
Seven's a good number.
is that a good number?
It's a
good
great
Jewish
number.
number.
It's a great
So for
number.
a Jewish meeting, 7 steps is the perfect number. I was just filling it to you guys.
I appreciate that. And I apologize. I was working with 2 wonderful B'nai Mitzvah students on their Devar Torah, which seems very fitting as I'm preparing to share one with you. And they have the dubious honor of celebrating becoming Bar and Bat Mitzvah on the Shabbat morning when we have the best Torah portions that you could have as a 13-year-old. And those portions come to us from the book of Leviticus, and they are Tazria and Mitzorah. And anyone who's read the book of Leviticus, and I know you've read it cover to cover, you understand that Tazria talks about all of the wonderful fluids that can emit from our bodies at all various times in our lives for various reasons, intentional and unintentional. And Mitzorah talks about these wonderful skin diseases and pussy boils and nastiness that, since all of you have just about finished your dinner, I feel very good talking about. So, but they did a great job in finding, even through all that yucky messages. And what I wanted to share with you tonight was not anything about Tazria and Mitzorah, thank goodness. But to share something actually that I shared last night with our executive committee. And so Ken, I apologize because you're going to have heard this before. But I think I didn't want you to think I was getting senile and repeating myself without knowing that I was repeating myself. And I want to think because it's there's a piece in our tradition that a value of hakarat hatov, of recognizing the good. And that every opportunity that we have to do hakarat hatov, to recognize the good, we bring ourselves just a little bit closer to the Messianic age, right? That we add goodness in the world by recognizing. And so I want to recognize the goodness of a colleague of mine whose last name happens to be Goodyear, Rabbi Steve Goodyear, for the inspiration and for elements of this Devar Torah that I want to share now. But before I do that, I would like to ask all of us to join together in the blessing that we say when we have the opportunity to study Torah together. The last 3 opening 10 words of most prayers, blessings that we say before we do something, up to the word Vitzivanu, and then La'asok b'divrei Torah, which means to busy ourselves or engage ourselves with the words of Torah. And as I said, I think last time or maybe 2 times before, the great thing about these blessings is that you don't have to know them word by word, you just have to know, understand, and accept the meaning of it, and then say Amen. And that basically means me too, or I believe that, or that speaks for me as well. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So a teacher was sitting at her desk grading papers when her first grade class came back in from lunch. And one of her students informed her that Robert has to go to the principal's office. I wonder why, she muttered out loud. Because he's a following person. A what? Well, it came over the loudspeaker. the following persons are to go to the office. If some people are following persons, then there must be leading persons. And actually, we are each followers and leaders at different times. Sometimes we drive the bus, and sometimes we are along for the ride, or we help navigate. But if you are ever in a leading position, this advice from college football coaching legend Bear Bryant about how to get the best from those around you can be quite useful. I'm just a plow hand in Arkansas, Bear said, but I have learned how to hold a team together, how to lift some men up, how to calm others down, until finally they've got one heartbeat together, a team. There are just 3 things I'd say. If anything goes bad, I did it. If anything goes semi-good, then we did it. If anything goes real good, then you did it. That's all it takes to get people to win football games for you. I think that is advice worth remembering, that this is advice worth remembering, no matter who we are, but particularly for anyone who might find themselves in a leading role, like each and every one of you. Call them Bear's Tips for would-be leaders. When you're involved, number 1, when you're involved in any endeavor that doesn't go well, assume appropriate responsibility for the outcome. No excuses. Nurse Florence Nightingale said, "I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse." If you're in charge and it doesn't go well, let it be on you. Good leaders can take it. 2, when the outcome isn't brilliant, but still okay, share the success with others. No leader achieves anything alone, and everyone can use the boost. Above all, never look for somebody to blame. We take credit for the good and the bad together. Finally, when things go especially well, give credit to others. Remember what T.S. Eliot wrote. Half the harm that is done in this world is due to people who want to feel important. Let go of the need for personal recognition. Heap kudos on others and they'll perform even better next time. Leaders are only as good as those who follow them, and followers are at their best when leaders are quick to give credit for successes. There they are, Bear's Tips for would-be leaders. Follow them, and you'll find more success the next time, and that will be very soon, that you are a leading person. Amen. Amen. Baruch to you.
I'm not going to read Bob's intro because it's in your binders and it's very long and extensive. He has a long list of accolades after his name, but he's an entrepreneur. He's written books and he's done a lot of lecturing, and his focus is really about engaging not only leaders, but how to give presentations and how to lead different organizations. So I'm just going to let him introduce himself and get this program started. So, Bob Bartha.
Can you hear me? I don't see a microphone. Come back with me to December 26, 1981. Sydney Harbour, Sydney, Australia. 180 boats leave the harbor to start a 600-mile race across some of the most treacherous stretches of the Southern Ocean. The boats battle each other for position. They battle the elements for survival. By the time the lead boat, Condor Bermuda, crosses the finish line more than 3 days later, the only thing that separates her from the second place finish is 7 seconds. 600-mile race, 3.5 days, only 7 seconds between first and second place. As we compete, as we try to lead, we don't have to worry about the entire race. We worry about small things. Because yacht racing, like business, like life, is a game of inches and seconds gained or lost over the long haul. How we win is the accumulation of decisions and actions by the entire team. That's what determines whether we lose or we win. Now, Rebbe used a nice football analogy, and I could give you the idea of the Super Bowl that was won by 1 point. When you look at all the Masters tournaments in golf, the difference between first and second place is usually 1 or 1.5 strokes. If you watch horse racing, the difference between first and second place is not the minute and a half of the race, it's 1/10 of a second. So to me, leadership is the little things that add up to make the wins, not the entire race, not the entire conflict. So how do we improve our chances for success? One of the keys is to build a winning team. But I think even more important than that is creating an environment in which we can actually succeed. The environment we create is more important than really who's on our team. In business school, we talk about how to get ahead, how do we analyze situations so that we can learn something from the situations. We typically look at case studies. So to get us started for tonight and to continue on from your previous weeks, I'd like to share with you a case study and then discuss what is the wisdom that's contained within that case study. Does that seem like it's something we should do? All right. The case study itself is multiple pages long. I want to summarize it so we don't spend a lot of time having me just read to you. It's not supposed to be a bedtime story. So the chairman and founder of a large nonprofit civic organization wanted to build a mobile conference center. The purpose of this mobile conference center is to take the leadership team to where the people were. So the leadership team can have a place to meet, discuss plans for the future, and to give them guidance, the organization members, guidance and leadership. The chairman discussed his specific plans with the organization's executive director, whose name happens to be Mo. The chairman, whose name is never mentioned, gave Mo the blueprints. And he tasked Mo with the job of overseeing the entire project. Another point is the chairman told Mo about another member of the organization, whose name was Boz, who the chairman had his eye on. The chairman said, Boz has both the skill and the ability to get the job done, but in addition to that, Boz is a good teacher. He can teach those skills to other people. Okay, another part here is the chairman suggested that Boz, along with Boz's assistant Ali, be actually put in charge of carrying out the wishes, fulfilling the project. The chairman further suggests that donations of labor and material be sought from anyone who was in the mood to be generous and wanted to volunteer. He also recommends that both Mo, Boz, and Ali should certainly recruit skilled labor, but that anyone who wanted to volunteer was welcome to participate. So what are your takeaways from this case study? Is there anything that comes to mind that's applicable to the situation you find yourselves in now? Is this on? Is this on? Bueller, please.
I mean, there doesn't seem to be any buy-in whatsoever. So it sounds like the chairman just said, here's what I want you to do, here's how I want you to do it, here's your cookbook, and I'm not really interested in, your input and whether or not you're excited about this idea in general.
Okay. I find that interesting. I'd like to differ on just one point.
Okay.
The chairman said, this is what I want done, but never said how to do it.
I think he does.
Didn't he give a blueprint?
He gave the blueprint of what he wanted to accomplish, but not the specific tasks and actually how to put it together. This is what I want the finished product to look like, but not how to do it. But I see your point that it wasn't, he didn't necessarily look for buy-in, but he did say, bring me volunteers, ask people who want to volunteer to help. Great. Suzanne, you had a comment.
Well, I was just thinking, to Melissa's point, he also said, anybody who wants to help should be allowed to help. Here are the blueprints. This guy is someone who you should tap, and his assistant you should tap, and you be in charge. I mean, I think that's a lot of it laid out in the pieces that you gave us.
Okay, good. Marcia?
You don't really know what the relationship is between these, the Mo and Boz, and how well they work together on a big project like this. That would be my question.
Okay? We don't know. All right. Jennifer?
To me, it just struck me sort of as, I don't know what the mission of this organization is. And is a mobile conference center getting you out in the people, like how does that work towards the mission? Like a nonprofit employee is probably motivated by doing good in the community, and you're tasked with something that you might not believe is accomplishing the mission of the organization. I'm wondering where that piece is of putting it in a perspective of how this gets us to our goals.
So the executive director really needs to get the message out and connect the dots between what we're trying to accomplish, our mission and vision, and how this relates to building this mobile conference center. Okay? I saw his hand up here, I apologize.
No, I agree with you there. I was just thinking about it, he does seem to be empowered, because he's saying, you know, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. So he's not being very like a dictator. So I think that actually is good for a team, that people that are on the team feel a little more empowered of they don't have to do exactly this way.
Okay?
That's one good thing.
Good. What other comments might we have? Please.
So I sort of agreed with what you were saying. I felt like it was giving them a lot of ownership of the project. Like, this is what we have to accomplish, but and these are the people you should include. Go figure it out, work together and figure it out how we should, which I like.
Okay. One of the things I got from it is the chairman was looking for generosity and active participation. Who wants to volunteer? If you're willing to volunteer, please come and help. And we'll put a teacher with you, so if you don't have the skill set, we'll give you what you need. We'll help you through it. But what's in your heart was more important than whether you have the skills. Yeah, we have skilled people, let's look for skilled people, but if we don't have everybody we need, but we have volunteers who are willing to help, let's put them to work. Another thing I took away from this was, as we talked about, this is what I want to accomplish, this is our goal. How you do it's up to you. I don't need to micromanage you. Your heart will tell you the way to go. Use your skills, use your community, and accomplish the tasks. Is there anything else in this case study that may be applicable to what we're looking for? One of my concepts is I would like people with a good attitude and good skill. But I don't always get both of those. So to me, what is more important is having the right attitude. Because we can teach skill, we can't teach attitude. Now I have to say that this is probably in the way that I read and made up this case study. Does it make a difference in the story if what they were building is a mobile conference center called the Ark, the Holy of Holies, the Tabernacle? It's a mobile conference center. Would that change the perspective of what the chairman wanted to do? Now, my wife told me to make sure that I don't laugh at my own joke when I refer to the executive director as Mo. I didn't want to give away the story. It was God telling Moses, this is what God wants to accomplish. Let the people volunteer. Let them come forth what's in their heart, what spirit moves them. The other thing that I found interesting about these sections of Exodus that I put together, my apologies to the Rebbe, is that God's the one who gave people their skill. And even, to me, even God says, let people come forth who want to volunteer, whether they have the skill or not. God could give them the skill if He wanted to, and He chose not to. What He wanted is to let people volunteer, and I think we're in the same position. Not everybody who wants to volunteer has all the skills that we need to accomplish what we want to accomplish. But if they have in their heart the willingness to volunteer, bring it on. That's who we want. And then it's our job as leaders to be that teacher, to show them the way, to help them through, to be their mentor, to take them forward. My first question, we're going to get into your homework, is what is the job of a leader? Is the job of a leader to create followers? Is that the leader's job? Would anyone like to take a stab at that one? Please.
I think of leaders as inspiring followers more than creating followers.
Okay.
The leader creates a vision for people to work with, accomplish the vision.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
I was gonna say leaders create collaborators, not followers.
Okay. All good answers. I would like to say it as leaders don't create followers, leaders create more leaders. We give people what they need to move ahead so they can become leaders themselves. So while Bear Bryant is certainly a winning coach, I don't mean to step on Bear's toes because he's actually bigger than me anyway, but I don't want to create followers. As a leader, I don't want to create followers or any words like that. I want to create more leaders. I want to empower people to take control of their part of the projects and ultimately to take over. From my perspective, when we look at the hierarchy in the business world, I don't get pulled up from above. I get pushed up from underneath. And I think that's the way most people are. You don't get promoted by being pulled. You get promoted by being pushed. So we want to create people, into more leaders, to empower them. And just like the story that I changed to build the mobile conference center, here's the goal. This is what we want to accomplish. Go do it. I don't need to spend my time micromanaging you. Use your creativity and go forward. Give people the freedom and the empowerment to take on those tasks. I was talking to Julie earlier about how do we get people involved? How do we make sure they show up on time? How do they accomplish their tasks? And I think if we empower people, they want to do the job. It's what's in their hearts to move forward. So they bring their passion to the table. They want to show up. They show up early. Like, the doors aren't open yet. They're waiting outside to get in because they're thrilled about doing things. In the business world, we talk about making profit. So we want to get the best people. Here's the task, do this because we're driving the bottom line. But that's not what the mission statement says by the doors here. What's the mission here? To repair the world, to generate charity, to build a community. The profit is not in money at the bottom line. The profit is in the hearts of everybody who's in the room, everybody who's part of the congregation. So how can we improve what's in their heart? How can we help them move forward? So looking at your homework, that's the questions A and B. And I need to remind myself, because I have lots of notes. How do we do that? What are the characteristics of leadership as it applies both at your work and here at the temple? We'd like to start off with what an idea or two for A. What's your vision, your idea of great leadership? Please.
A great leadership is listening more and talking less. It's having a vision and being able to articulate that vision clearly and convincingly. It's being able to make other people feel enabled, empowered, and appreciated.
Very good. Very eloquent. Please.
Independent list. I also thought it was funny because you said good leaders are pushed to the top, not pulled. And I think that's the idealistic view. I don't think that happens often in business or personal, but I think a leader needs to set an example, kind of walk the talk. A good leader is visionary, a good listener, a big thinker, walks the talk, and able to see the forest from the trees. He's able to rally and inspire the team, communicate the goals and direction, as well as get the best thinking and the most work from the team.
Okay. Why do we create a vision as a leader?
That's your goal. Vision is the goal. Stay focused.
So everybody knows which direction to go. And what else, what other advantage is there to having a good vision? Inspiring in what way?
Other people like that vision, they're going to be inspired and motivated to try to get there or do that or achieve that.
So if we could put that to what word, what one word would we use to go with vision?
Purpose.
Sorry?
Purpose.
Purpose? Great. I like to use why. Why are we doing this? Let's connect the dots. Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? Especially when, you know, we do tasks that are mundane and routine, and we got to get them done because that's part of the project. Can we remember why we're doing this? What is the bottom line? What's the end result?
Well, I think also a vision and a mission serves to help you stay focused so that you don't get off doing a project that actually doesn't connect. I mean, I think one of the most important pieces of that in terms of the foundation for the way that the organization functions is to always be able to say, how does this help, how does this project help us achieve what we're trying to achieve, back to what Jennifer said about the case study. I think that's an incredibly important thing because it's very easy in a room when you're trying to come up with ideas, what can we do about this, and all of a sudden the ideas get to a place where you're like, but wait a minute, how does that even address what our bigger focus is and where we're actually trying to go? Does it really serve what we've said is our vision or our mission?
That's great. Does it move us closest to our goal?
Right.
So we have something, some metric, to go back to the business world, some metric to measure against. And then the why part of the vision is the motivation to keep us, the purpose to keep us moving in that direction, even when things are tough, challenging, or sometimes boring. You know, we got to lick envelopes or stuff them, whatever it happens to be. It's part of the, you know, nature of the beast. This is why we're doing it. Are we just stacking bricks, or are we building a chapel? What other thoughts do you have for A? Please.
I'm happy to share. Great leaders inspire others to action. They are able to see the big picture and always keep the mission and vision of their organizations in mind, especially when making decisions. They are willing to take responsibility. They work hard. They listen to, learn from, and work well with others. They communicate effectively. They are willing to take on challenges, take risks, and persevere in the face of obstacles.
Good. So we talked about creating a vision. Do we just need one mission, one vision? I mean, the temple has a mission statement. It's by the door. I stopped and read it a few times. I thought it was great, by the way.
Yeah. I said, excuse me, that a person also has to have a personal vision. The organization can have a vision, but I think the leader within that organization has to have a personal vision as well as to where they want to see movement towards that overall vision. So I think you have many visions coming together to serve the greater vision.
That's good. So we may have in this case, the temple vision. What about your committee, your department, your area vision? And then, as you talk about your personal vision, they all tie together. One leads to the next, but it gives us something to work for, maybe an immediate step. So again, we have something to measure against, so we know we're making progress. If you've ever read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 2 is? It's a 30-year-old book. Everybody read it. It's hard to keep them straight. Begin with the end in mind. That's the vision. That's the goal. That's, we know where we're going, and then why we're going there. So let's go on to question B, and the characteristics of a good leader. What do you have on your list? Please.
Leads, doesn't manage, does that with a demonstration of self-confidence, but with humility. Operates with integrity and transparency, walks the talk, and insists on doing the right thing. Takes initiative, strong fundamentals, but is execution-oriented. Holds himself or herself and others accountable, and communicates a vision.
Good. Jennifer, did I see your hand up?
It was my hand, but much of what I had is very similar.
But they can be yours. You can have duplicate, please.
So I had some of the same, but I also had it's someone who has the ability to make difficult decisions and then stand by those decisions even when they're questioned. And it's someone who has ethics and morals.
Great. Please.
So just two different ones are Consistency and predictability. I just think about the folks that I've worked for that have been really strong leaders. And then also someone that's a lifelong learner, that knows what they don't know and is basically willing to listen to the expertise of others.
And admit it. Please.
Okay, I found a few things on there. I'll say, organization, people be organized, although Mike said it. Rapport, be able to synthesize information, and being a connector of people.
Okay. Please.
I think another piece is that they need to have either a passion or enthusiasm or dedication to whatever it is that they're leading about, underlying for themselves.
Good, Dawn.
I used a different word, I said charisma.
I do too. I use that one.
It's nice to have, is it a necessary characteristic?
No.
I think leaders need to be inspirational. And, that's, I think charisma can help someone be inspirational, but I think there are times, not all the time, but there are times when a leader needs to be inspirational.
I'm not sure that charisma, though, is synonymous with having a passion for something. I think you can be a person who maybe doesn't have a lot of charisma in the way that you share, but your passion for whatever it is that you're doing comes through anyway. Like, I can think of a math teacher that I had in high school who was phenomenal, and I would not say that charisma was his strong suit, but his passion for math was infectious. Like, he just was so enthusiastic or passionate about what he was trying to convey, that the fact that he really didn't have much charisma didn't interfere. Like, that came through as the piece of it. I think it can be expressed as charisma, I just don't think it necessarily is for everybody.
Could it be just a matter of definition? How do you define charisma versus inspiration versus passion? I read a study where somebody took the 500 most used words in the English language. How many different definitions do you think there are for those 500 words? 1,000? 2,000? 5,000? I believe the study said there was 14,000 definitions for those 500 words. So the word itself may not be important. It's the characteristic, the behavior that we're looking for is really the important part. My concern about using words like charisma is that someone says, well, I don't really have any charisma. But they're still a leader. They can still inspire people to accomplish their goals. So we may have to, at times, be careful about the words that we use. Instead, maybe we can just describe what we're trying to accomplish, what we're looking for. Here's the goal, and we just use different words to make them adaptable to our audience. One of my talks is on the responsibilities of leadership. I think leaders have to do 6 things. They have to establish a goal. And then once that goal is established, you analyze that goal to figure out what roles are necessary to accomplish that goal. Now, this is mostly in the business world where we can pick and choose more than we can in the volunteer world. The third step, to me, is then finding people who fit those roles. We don't take people in the business world and say, well, let's put you in this job. In the business world, we say, this is the job we have, this is the skill set we need, and we find people that match it. That's the exact opposite in the nonprofit and volunteer world. We find people who want to do something, and we let them do it, we give them what they need. So those two are typically reversed between commercial and nonprofit. Number 4, and I think this is probably the biggest one, is we need to give people the tools, the resources, the environment, the training, the skill, the encouragement that they need. Let's just call that the tools, but tools is much broader. And I believe that's what sets good leaders apart. What does the team need to succeed? Number 5 is we need to create the right environment, which typically in the business world means clearing out the red tape, getting rid of the obstacles. We want to turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones. I couldn't think of my own quote. Thank you very much. And then number 6 was the recognition and acknowledgement of good work. And when we talk about acknowledgement, it's specific. I don't know about you, but if somebody comes to me and says, hey, good job, I find that to be a useless statement. Good job on what? I did 17 things today. I messed up 3 of them. I did okay on 12, but 4 of them I really did well. What's the good job for? So as a leader, we want to recognize really good works. One of the things I talk about in the commercial world is you don't want to be a cop, you want to be a coach. You don't find people doing things wrong, you find them doing things right. So as we inspire our team, it's great job on that Jones mailing, wonderful whatever on the newsletter you put together, whatever it is, specificity builds credibility. So of the 6 even that I talked about, what kind of tools and resources can you bring to bear to help on the projects you're working on, to help your team get ahead? What tools and resources do they need? And they aren't necessarily physical items either. What can you think of? Dan, I'm going to pick on you.
What can I bring to my team?
Yeah.
So just thinking from the business world, which I walked out of, it was what equipment do they need? What could I get to help to motivate them? Going through our year-end bonus structure. So how much do we need to kind of dole out in order to entice people to do more for next year? So those are the sort of rewards that we're able to bring.
So from that, I think I'm hearing that if you pay people more, they'll work harder.
Specific, so it's identification of those that are, I guess, the top performers versus the ones that didn't perform the same way. So it's a reward system in that we're giving people, the high performers are being compensated for. So that's a tool that I bring in mind.
Great. Now in the temple, we're not throwing money at people, so what are we going to do?
That's the challenge. So it's probably just finding people are showing up because they want to be here, because they have the energy, the passion. It's letting them do the role that they want to do. What level? How do they want to be involved in the process? What are they looking to get out of the process and give them more opportunities.
Great. So if we give people what they want, we get what we want? Is that how that works? Isn't that amazing? We give people what they want. They come here looking for experience. They want to contribute in whatever way. And then we get what we want. We accomplish our goal. I like that one, and I didn't have to take any money out of my pocket. I like that. Can we do that more? Somebody had a hand up that I missed. Please.
Well, I think in nonprofits too, you said, so in business you say, this is the role that we have, this is what we need done, and you go find someone who has that tool set or that skill set.
Yes.
And I think in nonprofits, one of the keys to running boards or creating committees is to say, okay, A, how do you pick what committee do you want? What are you already passionate about in a way to pick your committee? But also, once you are working on a job, to look at the group and say, what do you want to do? What role do you want to have in this? And that's a big piece of it. I work with one board, and every year we say, all right, what role are you interested in? Okay, you want to be on the board, that's great, but these are the roles that we have available. Are any of those of any interest to you? Is there any interest that you have in doing these things? And if the answer is no, then let's find something else that you can do for us instead of this, because these are the roles that we have. I think there is some of that in terms of matching people's interests and things that they feel that they can do well with the tasks that you have available.
But if we give them predefined, well, these are the 5 roles, which one you want to do, again, I think it's an issue of definition. How do you define this versus that? And it may be, if you have someone with the Spirit moves them, I believe was one of the translations from Exodus, that what do you want to do? Not forget the roles we have, what do you want to do? A lot of people volunteer because it's the right thing to do, but there's also the people who volunteer because they want experience with something new. I can do this, I'm already an expert in this, I don't need to come here and do it, I can go to work and do it. I want to do this. Okay, great, then let's figure out You call it that, can we work that in somewhere? I'm just using an example. At work, somebody is the director of IT, but what they really want to do is lay out a newsletter. They want to be creative. Okay, well, what do we need that needs to be laid out? How can we apply that creativity? The exact opposite of the business world, essentially you're making the job. But along with that is who can then mentor that person to help them accomplish what they want to accomplish. You know, if we had all the money in the world, we would have everything in the world, and then we also have everywhere to put it. But we don't have all the money in the world, and money doesn't solve most problems. Now, to me, giving people more money doesn't make them work any harder. I've never found that to be true. As long as you can put a roof over your head and food in your stomach, more money doesn't make you do anything else, unless you directly tie the money to productivity. If you do 3 more, I'll give you 3 more of this. Usually if you give people more money, they think, well, I'm already doing the work, you're just giving me what I deserve. So money to me is not a motivator. People's passion is their motivator. So how can we utilize that passion? It may not fit into our preconceived categories, but it's in their heart. How can we take advantage of that? So what can you do to move forward, please?
One of the things I don't think we've emphasized yet is listening. Soliciting input and actually being an effective listener and hearing what it is that people are really telling you about how they contribute and what they can do, rather than knowing what you're going to say before you've actually heard what that person is going to share with you.
Yes, very much so. One of my favorite sayings is you can't
I'm just equating this to the Bears. How we gave Jay Cutler $100 million. He didn't do anything. Mark Trestman couldn't lead this team. Look what happened.
Do we need more proof? Why isn't that it's for every touchdown that you scored, you get $10,000 or $50,000, whatever the number is? Why does nobody do that? That's a whole nother discussion. Very pleased.
But I'll ask a question. Is Trestman a bad leader? Or is he a bad leader of an NFL team? Could he be a good leader in a different environment?
That may well be the case. It's not unusual that people are just in the wrong environment in which to...
Managing 53 egos, it's a very tough job. But would he be good at a nonprofit or somewhere else? He's obviously, and he's a smart guy, and he's maybe a bad NFL leader, but somewhere else.
So when we talk about football, the Rebbe has the... I use football typically as an opening story. I am not the expert in football. The idea of NFL teams, there's so many things involved that I don't think the coaches are really the coaches. I think that they're the mouthpiece for somebody else. And it just goes to show that money doesn't necessarily automatically come with wisdom. It doesn't come with an owner's manual. So just because they own the team doesn't mean they're really good at it. Or look at the Cubs. They don't want to win. You look at their entire history. It's not about winning. It's about the community and being involved in it. So I don't know that professional sports are good examples of leaders. There are certainly certain leaders within professional sports that are good examples of leaders. Bear Bryant was a good example. To me, Billy Martin was another one of those guys. And I don't really follow those kind of sports, but it was the same thing as Bear Bryant was talking about. When their team was doing poorly, Billy Martin would act up and he'd get all the press. When their team was doing well, who's Billy Martin? So I think that's, PR, but that's not leadership.
I think Ohio State is a good example. Things were less than 24 hours from the championship. The story that came out over the weekend is that Coach Meyer gave an assignment to all his players and said, what's the most important thing you need to know for this upcoming weekend? What's the most important task at hand? And what's most important to you? They turned in all their assignments. And each of the football players the next day got a box. And inside their box, they had a picture, they opened it up, of a teammate, nothing from what they had said. So all the statements were attached to their teammates, but a teammate's picture was found in their own box. So the goal was...
The team is the most important part.
The next person.
Yeah. So let me play a mind game with you. I'm messing with your head. I'm telling you in advance. I'd like you to pick up a pen and find a blank space where you can potentially make some notes. Imagine you're at work and you're a leader at work, and I'd like you to write down everything you have to do that's more important than effectively communicate. Effectively communicate. Write down everything you have to do that is more important than effectively communicate. Anyone who has a pen in your hand, please put it down. There is nothing more important as a leader than effectively communicating. And effectively communicating includes listening. What is going on? How can we share our vision? How can we connect the dots? How can we inspire people? But more importantly than that, how can we listen to people? What you say, how you say it, where you say it, when you say it is very important. But not as important as what people hear, as what people see. So maybe we call this charisma, maybe we call this inspiration, but as a leader, what's important is our message getting through to the people we want to get it through to in the way we intend. Oftentimes it's not even so much that you listen, but that people you're talking to feel like they've been heard. That's one of the ways we can inspire people. Did you really hear what they said? So I believe there's some old biblical reference called the Golden Rule. Anybody remember where that happens to be? You know, treat others as they want to be treated. Do you think, when it comes to leadership, that that's a good idea? I don't think it is. There's a friend of mine named Dr. Tony Alessandra. He created the Platinum Rule. The Platinum Rule is treat other people as they want to be treated. Some people want to have a long conversation, explain all the details. This is where we're going, this is what we're doing, this is plan A, this is plan B, here's the backup plan. Other people just want the bottom line. But how do we know what people want unless we listen to them? Unless we communicate with them effectively. So I like the characteristics and traits you wrote down as a leader, but I think there's things on the top. A leader to me, and some of you already said it, listens and listens well. And then adapts the message appropriately to the audience. So as a leader, you have to be adaptable. Have you ever seen the DISC profile? Any of the 4 quadrants, Myers-Briggs, any of those? Yeah. They're all interesting. Some people call them psychological profiles. I would rather refer to them as behavioral profiles, because it's not how you think, it's really how you act. In quick summary, a D type is task-oriented and pretty assertive. The I type is people-oriented and pretty assertive. The S type is people-oriented, fairly passive. The C type is task-oriented but fairly passive. It just means that we're all different. Yes, your mother was right, you are unique. So if you're a C type, for example, you're task-oriented but you are not assertive. You're pretty detailed. I got plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a detailed plan. Let me tell you how we're going to get there. If you're a D, you want the bottom line. Does anybody work for a D? Does anybody here a D? I am.
I am.
That's surprising that you would be a D. I would put you as probably an S, but. So if you're a C, you want to talk about the whole plan, you want to talk about all the details, and you go into a meeting with a D, what does the D want? The bottom line. Just give me the conclusion. I don't want to hear the whole story. Is one of those right or one of those wrong? No, you're just different. So we have to be adaptable. So if you're a C as a leader, and you want to tell everyone the whole plan, you may lose half your audience. Because all they want to know is the bottom line. Please.
I was going to say, for me, a really great leader is someone who can engage people and motivate them.
And that's it. You have to catch that right away. Or if you lose them, then you're not going to accomplish your task.
Yes, so how do you do that when we have a room full of people?
You have to know your room. I don't know. It's difficult.
I think you're right. You have to know your room. You have to know each individual person, at least on your team, so as necessary you can adapt.
Right.
So now we know about behavior types. If I'm having a conversation with you and I say, you know, something just doesn't look right to me, but we're just talking, and I say, it just doesn't look right. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody and they say, well, you know, it just doesn't feel right to me? What are they telling you? Obviously something's wrong, but if you're having a conversation, what do you mean doesn't look like right? Is there a closed captioning that I don't know about? They're telling you that they are visual communicators. They communicate in pictures and picture words. Or if it doesn't feel right, they're telling you they're kinesthetic. They're touchy-feely. If you listen well, you pick up on those words, and you realize the other person may be different than you. And if you want to be adaptable, you start using picture words with visual people. You start using touch words, sensory words with kinesthetic people. So being a leader means you're being open. There's a story that I'm not sure where it comes from about the emperor and the prime minister, that the emperor used to walk around and be nice to everybody. The prime minister was the mean guy. So everybody listened to what the prime minister has to say because he was the mean guy. He was the one who's going to put you in jail. And the emperor, who cares? He's always nice to everybody. Well, the emperor got tired of being the nice guy and not getting any respect, so he said, let's switch roles. I'm going to start punishing people. You can be nice to everybody. So they'd go around and people would start listening to the emperor, and they thought the prime minister got to be a much nicer person. And after a while, the people got really tired of the emperor. They thought he was getting to be a dictator, and they're saying, yeah, but that prime minister's really coming around. He started to adapt to his audience. So you want to be the prime minister or the emperor? You want to be the incoming prime minister or the outgoing emperor? It's about listening. So if we listen to our people, we can then start giving them what they need, the tools, the resources that they need. And it may need to be left alone. You know, people like that are just, leave me alone, I'll do the job. And other people need to tell you every day, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. Sometimes it gets to be annoying. But if you want people to continue to volunteer, you have to give them what they want also. And they'll give you what you want. It's a pretty good value exchange. But that's leadership. It's not about what you want, it's about what your team needs. Not everyone can handle it. We have to be open and adaptable. I know I'm a D. I don't want to hear about your vacation. I don't make small talk. I have to force myself to do it. When I walked in this evening, I mentioned to Danny that I'm pretty shy. It may be surprising, but I'm really shy. I don't like meeting people. Why did I come up the most to you and introduce myself? It's my way of trying to get over the shyness. I know that if I want to attempt to connect with people in the room, that I have to be warmer, so I have to push myself to do it. My name is Bob. I hear Bob all day long. Every commercial is about Bob. What about Bob? I get tired of hearing my own name. You know, most people say that the best sound you can ever hear is the sound of your own name. I can't stand it some days. So why do I try to use your names? To remind me that I really should be using your names because most people like it. So I'm trying to be adaptable. Doesn't always work, but we're trying. So as a leader, another thought that I had is, we're not looking for perfection. We're not looking to be the perfect leader. We're just looking for progress. Just to be a little bit better today than yesterday. So who's good in math? Anybody good in math? So Matt, let me ask you a math question. If I get 1% better every day, how much better will I be at the end of the year? At the end of a year?
You get 1% better.
Yes. 1% better every day.
Well, it's 99% times 365.
So we're going linear or exponential?
It's, well, it's her. you're getting better by a little bit less every day.
1% better every day.
Well, it's a little bit less of the original.
Are you a C-type? It's an interesting math problem. If it's linear, we're getting 365% better at the end of the year.
I assume 1%
Right.
of.
If it's exponential,
Yeah.
if it's exponential, it's about 5,000% better at the end of the year. But you look back and go, wow, in only a year, all you have to do is just be a little bit better every day. So if you're not used to being a leader, do you think you have to be perfect? All you have to do is just be a little bit better. What can I do to be a little bit better? Now, I like the yacht racing story because that's my hobby. I race sailboats. I race those boats. And I face those challenges. And I look for those 7 seconds all the time. The little things to add up. So with your teams, what can you just do? A little thing here, a little thing there. A little notch. Just to help the team move forward. We're just looking for progress. So what happens if you fall flat on your face as a leader? Please.
You have a lot of possible things to learn. Because
Great.
any time that you make a mistake or there's a fail, you have a much better chance to learn something from it and go on and do even better than if you had a great success. And oftentimes when you've had a great success, it's paralyzing because you look back and you go, why did I do that? And so you don't have a place to go. But when you fail, you can look at, okay, what did we do? And what can we do differently? And there's just a lot of room for improvement.
Great attitude. I love it. Please,
I think
Marsha.
the best leaders are the ones who are not afraid to fail. A lot of people who say, what holds you back from being a leader? I'm afraid. Fear. And so good leaders are the ones who say, I can bring it on. If I fail, I'll just try it again. And it's a really unique characteristic, I think, in human beings.
Fear of failure and fear of success.
Maybe.
If I do well, they can ask me to do something else.
Right.
Probably.
Well, in volunteering especially.
What did you accomplish? I think you had another comment, please.
Well, I have a D comment. That you get up. You fall, then you get up. Period.
So I'm 5'9". If I fall flat on my face, what have I just accomplished? I just made 5'9" progress. There's always something positive. I have a little 5-year-old niece. She's 42.5 inches tall, blonde, cute as a button. She lives in Minnesota. If you've ever been to Minnesota, you know that they have the Mall of America, the largest indoor mall in the United States. In that mall, they have an indoor amusement park. She wanted to go to the amusement park. I'm the adventurous uncle. I took her to the amusement park. What do you want to do? I'm going to go on the roller coaster. To go on the roller coaster, you have to be 42 inches tall. So she just made it. She was the smallest kid there. She saw the big kids going on the roller coaster going, woohoo, woohoo! And that's what she wanted to do. I said, okay, let's go. Let's get on the roller coaster. We get on the roller coaster, the safety bar comes down, she puts a death grip on the bar. The car starts to move. Grip gets tighter. It's about 2 minutes around, we go around, we get off, I go, hey, great, we did the roller coaster, what else you want to do? Can we go again? Sure, come on, let's go. Get in the car, bar comes down, death grip on the bar, car starts to move. Good, we made progress, we go around, okay, we get off, what do you want to do? Can we go again? Sure. Get in the car, bar comes down, death grip on the bar. This time, 2 of the hands. I think we went around 6 times. But by the time we were done, she had both hands in the air yelling, woohoo, woohoo! Just like the big kids. What she taught me that day is that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear, but recognizing that something else is more important. To little Emily, having her hands in the air was way more important. As leaders, what's more important is accomplishing your goals, helping people to move forward. As the mission statement says for the temple, to repair the world, to be charitable. These are way more important things than our petty little fears. Am I making fun of you? It's not my intention. It's like, compared to what we want to do with the world, our own fears are really nothing. We use a lot of sports metaphors. Where is the battle? Is it on the 100-yard football field? Is it on the tennis court? Is it on the basketball court? Is it on the diamond? Where really is the battle being fought? Anybody know? Right here, a much smaller turf. That's where the battle is. Everybody's afraid of something. Supposedly, junk science says the #1 fear in the world is public speaking. It's not. That comes from a Seinfeld routine. There really is a list of the #1 fear, and it's snakes. It is not public speaking. Everybody who can speak is a public speaker at some point. You know, if you're talking to somebody else, you're a public speaker. You can get over it. I'm scared all the time when I'm speaking. I'm shy. This is a lot for me. If I can do it, it's possible to do. So for yourself, you connect the dots. What are you in the leadership position for? What do you want to accomplish? Who do you want to help today? Where can you go? So what characteristics, what traits, your B answers, what do you use to get there? What do you got? I don't see your name tag, but I'm going to pick on you anyway.
Jennifer.
Jennifer, thank you. Does that make 3? Is that right?
There's 2.
Sure. Okay. Oh no, you put your jacket on, that's it. You put your jacket on.
I was cold.
Okay, that's what, I thought I saw multiple name tags.
No, I do have it. What were my characteristics?
That you think you can bring forth as a leader.
So I wrote that so in B, I listed characteristics by just full of, like, words.
Great.
So I just pulled those down. I said I would think that I had to be passionate about what I'm interested in and inspiring and motivating about that. I'm very organized, I'm very determined, and I put, well, this was something we were sort of touching on with the charisma thing, which and the whole definition thing, that was what I was feeling, and I felt that that was when you talk about leadership, there's something like you were saying about being shy, but it has to do with being, you may be very shy, but you can tell you're sociable when you need to be like in this arena. So I feel like being sociable and sort of empathetic with who you're dealing with, knowing your room, sort of feel like I have empathetic.
Empathy is a great word. So what is empathy? Can you help us define that?
Sure. I think empathy is being able to connect with someone else's emotions, understand them, versus being sympathetic, where you just, or like being able to disconnect from that feeling to understand it, but be efficient with managing your feelings.
So understanding other people. You don't have to agree with other people, but at least you can understand where they're coming from. It's a way to have an interesting conversation. Well, I appreciate what you're saying. I disagree with it, but I certainly understand why you would have those thoughts. Then you can have meaningful conversation. Again, circles back to why I think effectively communicating is the most important skill. We're not always going to agree with everybody. We're not always going to have the right words, but we can have an understanding to help move forward. So who has not yet spoken up? Because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Because I want to hear all your wisdom so I can use my own talk tomorrow.
I've been very quiet.
Okay.
I'm not really a quiet person. But I'll try with this. Does it see where I'm here? I tend to always engage with my teams, and I feel it's important to not just interact with them, but kind of take on their headache and be in their shoes a little bit. That seems to have helped me in my career. Include people in the planning process, but really give them a clear plan at the end of the day. And I think that's come up a couple times tonight, but I really have found that to be important, to empower people to create an environment to give their opinion so that we can all put a comprehensive plan together. It's been important. And I think this came up as well. Keep decision-making as consistent and logic-based as possible, and that's really what I've been able to do with my teams over the years.
Okay. Do we have any hands go up on that one? I hear what you're saying.
I mean, I guess if I had to further explain it, I think if someone comes to me with a problem, I think they would probably have an idea of what my impression would be before they walk in my office.
So my jump on there was the keep it logic-based. Do we want to have that exclusively, or is that just one of the elements?
I think it's probably more one of the, I really would depend on, there could be a number of things.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I think it really depends.
But on one end, it's we need to deal with logic. On the other end, it's an emotional issue. Anyone in marketing here? Do you say something like, was it logic tells and emotion sells? Don't we need to grab people by their hearts and their minds? So it's not right or wrong, it's your style. Someone else may be on the other end of the spectrum saying, well, we gotta be emotional. You know, the Save the Animal commercials with Sarah McLachlan singing, and you know, Save the Children with there's always one kid. I mean, they do those commercials on purpose to try to grab your heartstrings. But that's way at one end of the spectrum. And then it's, you know, we have a V8 with the 12-inch wheels and the, you know, whatever. On the other side, theoretically logical, even though that's also supposed to be emotional. I think we have to balance both. We have to deal with the entire human being, and they have both a mind and a heart. We've got to get them both. Some people are a little better at one than the others. That's okay. We do the best we can with what we have. But we keep in mind of what makes sense for other people. Now, it seems to me, and I don't know you, but if I gave you, you know, the list of the features and benefits, that may work for you. And for someone else, it may be, well, how do you feel about that? Not the features, but the results. Please.
Yeah, it's funny, so I have an example to share about that. Matt and I were talking about, I serve on a board where we were talking about doing a new event, and the group who was talking about the event, we were focused on that it would be fun, that people would love it, that people would get engaged, and Matt said, well, you have to look at, like, what did you make on the whole event, and how did you bring in, and where did you bring in that money, and you have to know these things before you can decide if you're just going to change the event. And it was so, like, we didn't have anybody with that perspective in the room that I was in initially, and so nobody was bringing that to the table. And I think sometimes, going back to what you said about being adaptable, I think a leader has to be able to appreciate and help bridge the gap between those different ways of thinking in a group, especially when you have a group of people who come from a lot of different perspectives. You get those people in a room and at a table, and there's value to each perspective, and to be able to help weave that together and keep everybody engaged and cooperative and whatnot, I think is one of the article pieces of leadership.
So does a team need to be populated by everyone with the same skill set? So what should the team be populated by?
So one of the things that I said about values and principles is that I have, my perception is that I have the ability to keep a focus on the big picture while making sure that the team collectively doesn't lose track of some of the detail that needs to be taken care of in order to get to the big picture. So I never lose sight of that big picture, but I'm making sure that collectively we're covering our bases to get towards the.
So you're looking for complementary skill sets to yours?
No, I'm looking for, not necessarily, well, depends on how you want to define complementary. I'm looking for.
If you're a big picture thinker, who's going to deal with the details?
So I'm saying that I recognize that the detail needs to be attended to. I'm willing to work on the details as well, but I also have to make sure that collectively, all of us have enough different skills to make sure that the detail can be taken care of.
Seems to me that we're saying the same thing, right? So instead of all the same skill set, we're looking for complementary skills, offsetting skills. Again, it's a matter of definition. What words do we want to use? So we want people who are different than us. Does anybody play tennis here? Do you want to play with someone who's worse than you or better than you?
A little.
What? I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to learn. Why do you want to play with someone who's a little better than you? And it depends how you define better. They're just different. So I learned this way versus that way. I can use, you know, this motion versus that motion. Another big advantage of having people on the team that are different. We look for people purposely who are different, so we can bring in their perspective, their knowledge, their viewpoint. I know a lot of speakers, and if they're in town, I'll go listen to them speak, because I usually learn something from every one of them. Oh, the way you did that. Oh, the way you did. I don't ever want to do that. I like this.
I have a question.
Please.
So along with what Scott was saying, depending on what the task is at hand, if you're trying to get a group together to do a task. If it's a very focused task, sometimes then it's beneficial to have a lot of people with the same skill set because it's all focused in one area. I'm kind of asking, or I'm telling you my logic as well. Most of the time, a project or an event or whatever you're doing or planning needs a lot of different skill sets because there's lots of different components to the project, and you're better off than, as she said, which I agree with, filling it with a lot of different skill sets that you then could tap into depending on what the needs are of the project. But I think really knowing what is it going to take to get whatever that project or goal to accomplish is key, so you could fill the committee with the right skill set. Sometimes it's focused, sometimes it's not, just what I found.
That was your second point when you said being a good leader was you define what the goal is and then you give the roles and then you go get the people.
Yes. When in a perfect world, when you can.
Right.
In the business world where we can hire who we want, typically, we can talk about constrained labor pools another day, but we look at the people we want, that's great. But in the temple world, we don't often have that luxury. We have to put people positioned as well as we can within the roles we still have defined. And in the nonprofit and volunteer world, it becomes, well, not what skill sets do you have, but what skill sets would you like to develop?
And helping them develop.
Right. And then we have to help them. Yes.
That's what the volunteer is going to get out of it,
Yeah.
is the mentorship, or learning something new or whatever it is.
But then you can also turn it around and say, and by the way, what are you good at? Because maybe they can mentor someone else on the team,
Exactly.
so you can get everything from
Yes.
that person that you're
And that's really getting to know the people well, their wants, their needs, their desires, and their skill sets. To me, I've been a volunteer many times, and it's funny that I end up doing the things that I'm really good at, but that isn't necessarily what I would want to do. I used to be on television. I was an actor, producer, and director for many years. So it's interesting that I'm part of a number of speaker groups, and we put on big events. Guess who gets to be the director? Because it's second nature to me. I don't even have to think about it. I did it for so many years. But that's not necessarily the stuff that I want to do. But I'm willing to do it so I can then do the other things that I want to do. So, you know, people realize, hey, Bob can do that, let him. So if you ever go to a party, is anyone a doctor? Don't admit you're a doctor. I have a lot of friends who are doctors. When they go to parties, they never say they're a doctor. Because always somebody's, I got a this, I got a that. I'm sorry, I'm a psychologist. Well, you know, I got this dream. So they typically, you know, go to parties and say, yeah, I'm a plumber. Really? The toilet upstairs is plugged? I'm unemployed. You got a job for me? No, no. They're left alone. So sometimes you don't want to let people know what your skills are. But with a volunteer organization, it's great to say, well, this is the skill set that I want to develop. This is what I want to do. I want to be an intern. I want to put in my resume that I did X, Y, or Z. Great. Put your effort into it, please.
Do you feel that, I'm a recruiter, so oftentimes I ask a prospective candidate, what do you enjoy most about your current position? Because I feel like a lot of times that tells me where their strengths are. But I guess what we're saying here is that not necessarily the case, and what they enjoy might be different from what they might be even better at, I guess.
Yes, in a volunteer world, it's not necessarily where their strengths are, but where their passions and desires lie. And maybe it is their strength. I'm an accountant and I'll be your treasurer. Great, you have the skills and you want to do it. We appreciate it. But it doesn't always work out that way. We have to keep in mind what people want to do. You know, if somebody's a house painter and you're doing a volunteer project, okay, we'll need the walls painted. I get Wally to do it. No, I paint all day long. I came here because I want to do the plumbing, or I want to do the wiring. I want to install the carpet this time. So we have exceptions in the volunteer world. In the business world, absolutely. What are your strengths? Peter Drucker said, pick the right fruit. Concentrate on what was left in, not what's left out. But that's the business world where we can pick and choose. In the volunteer world, we sometimes have to figure out where people want to go, not what skill set they already have. We help them develop their skill set because that's why they're here to volunteer. And we want everyone to volunteer. We want everyone to actively participate the best they can. And it may just be their participation is sitting in a chair saying, you missed the spot. If that's really what they want, if that's really how they can contribute, then let them volunteer. The worst thing, in my opinion, this is not an official temple comment, this is my opinion, the worst thing with volunteers is to not let them volunteer. They won't come back. Find something that they want to do
We did that.
most of the time. So also in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, if you haven't read it, it's, what, 30 years old, it's still a great book. Covey talks about an emotional bank account. Anyone know the theory? Just like a checking account, you have to make deposits before you can make withdrawals. And if you're overdrawn, you're in trouble. And it usually takes 6 deposits to counteract 1 withdrawal. So if you have volunteers and they want to do what they want to do to help, let them help most of the time, and then the one thing you need that they're good at but they don't really like to do because they do it all day at work, they're willing to do it because you've already built up your emotional bank account. Or some people call it a goodwill bank account. We just keep track, maybe a mental tally. Okay, they did this, this, this. I can now ask them to do that and they'll still keep coming back. But if we ask people to do things they really don't want to do, they may do it once, and then you'll see things like they come late and they miss the deadline and they forgot. To me, those are all effective communication. They're telling you exactly what they don't want. So we do what we have to keep people involved, to keep the big picture in mind, to accomplish our goals, to help us move forward. But this same concept works with your friends and family, with your coworkers at the regular job, with your kids. You get them involved, get them to do what they want to do, and you build up your bank account, and then when you need them to do things, they'll do it. They'll only grumble a little bit, but they'll still do it, and they're still there. Covey's a pretty smart guy, isn't he? Would you like to have the royalties in that book 30 years later? So who else has something on your B list that we can go through? Who else hasn't spoken up yet? Anyone you can think of?
Yeah. So and maybe I missed it or wasn't listening. So I think one of the skills that I bring to the table that I think is important to leaders is consensus building, is synthesizing ideas, and especially when you're trying to come to a decision, not just to accomplish a project. So,
I agree with you. And how can you build consensus?
Well, I guess through the things we've talked about, including active listening, and probably best is active listening.
So if you tell people what to do, they may just do it anyway because you told them to do it. They think, well, I'm a volunteer, I'm going to do it, and I don't really like to. If you ask people their input, and you make a decision that goes against what some people have suggested, are they going to go along with you, or are they just going to walk away? What's going to happen?
Depends on how much is in the emotional bank unit.
I think it depends on the process that you went through to get the decision.
So let's have 2 scenarios. I don't ask, I'm just going to tell you, this is what you guys are going to do. Scenario 2 is, tell me what you think. Let's discuss it, and then we'll come to some decision, but that decision may not be unanimous. Which one are you going to likely to accept more readily?
I think it depends on the decision that you're making. You're making a decision about how high should the screen be. People may get tired of, let's build some consensus around this. You know, it's an unimportant decision.
If the outcome doesn't matter, who
Right,
cares?
the important decisions, no, absolutely. People
Unless
need to
somebody-
feel invested.
Unless somebody has a passion about it.
They might have a passion about it.
And then it may be they're reasonable and it's my way or highway, but it's hard to deal with unreasonable people. And maybe you don't want them to volunteer. Please.
And I think that's what really rubbed me the wrong way about your initial example, no offense to God after you actually but I mean, you know, I'm sort of used to being managed in a way of here's our problem, you know, what should we do to solve it? And I felt like in that example, the reason why I felt that there was no buy-in was here's the solution, and now you have, you know, steps 5 through 10 to go implement the solution. That's how I saw it. And I felt like it was missing that, not necessarily consensus, but missing that solicitation of input. And maybe Mo had a better idea than an ARC, who knows? Or, you know, or the mobile communication center or whatever it was.
I call it a mobile conference center, the Tabernacle.
And that's good. That was kind of what caused me to react that way. You know, here's a blueprint, here's what we're gonna do. It wasn't, here's our problem. You know, do you have any ideas of, you know, let's talk about how to solve it?
That's a really interesting point, because especially when you take it to the kind of work we do here at Temple, is some things are directives. We have to accomplish X. Let's go figure out how to do it. And some are, what do you want to do? So sometimes committees or groups are getting together to dream big and figure out what the next thing's going to be. And then I totally agree with what you're saying. You're looking for a lot of input. Some of it is, okay, we've got to accomplish this. I don't really care how it gets done, but this is the deadline and we got to do it. So I think there's both.
Of course.
I mean, you know, in any organization, not just here.
I agree. What was missing from my case study was the why. And I thought if I explained the why, it would give away the whole story.
Right. And the blueprint word, I think, kind of, that semantics is a little bit important. You might want to change that one.
Except in the story, God really did give Moses the blueprint. It's 100 cubics by 50 cubics by 20 by 10 by these things. It was that specific in the blueprint, but what was missing, as you pointed out, was the why. If the people want me to dwell among them, this is what you got to do. So even when we have to be directive, though, we can still explain the why. We may not always ask what your input is, but this is why we want to do it. This is why we are doing it. Please.
Well, I think a lot of people want to feel valued for what they're doing, and this leadership group is my first entree into organized synagogue life. I come from the nonprofit world, and when I seek out volunteers, you know, we usually have high-level jobs that do require a certain skill set. You know, like I would not come to Temple Jeremiah and say, I want to be on your audit committee, because then someone would have to teach me how to read an audit. You know, this is counterproductive. It doesn't meet the needs of the synagogue. So I think there should be some empowerment of the volunteers to say, you know, you're a professional painter. You know, here, you've been volunteering on Sunday at the bagel shop, and thank you for that. You know, we have a need at the synagogue to repaint the sanctuary. We would appreciate your expertise if you could, you know, help us with this project or lead us with this project.
Yes.
You know, people do want to feel that they're valued, and if they're making an impact, and you can document and evaluate that impact, then they're going to feel that, you know, they shared, and it was valuable and made an impact on an organization they care about.
Yes. And if they want to do it, great. But what if they're a painter during all week and they don't want to come here and paint? They want to do something else.
I have to be prepared to accept a no. But if I didn't ask them, I'm not going to get them.
Yes. Effectively communicating. Yes. Knowing people and having a conversation, please.
I want to get back to your question about, is it better to give a directive or better to ask and potentially, you know, come up with something that people might not be happy about? I think a lot of it depends on the authenticity. I've been in situations where it was pretty clear that a decision had been kind of made, but people were asked what they thought, but it was kind of, or you'd find out afterward that kind of, a decision really kind of had already kind of been put in the works, but you're asked about it, and it was kind of like already going to go one way. I think those kinds of situations are really toxic and really kind of deflate the whole process and really tamper with the integrity. I think that if the leadership is genuine in seeking the input and in evaluating and working together in that consensus building and in accepting responsibility for a decision, that works for me.
I agree with you. That if we've already made a decision, we're asking people after the fact, what happened to being genuine?
Yeah.
That's out the window. I'm certainly not recommending that at all. But there are times
well, no,
where...
I'm not saying you're recommending it, but I think that happens more than we'd like to acknowledge.
Well, there are people who think they understand what leadership is, and they really don't. To me, and if someone's on the board of their condo, I apologize, but I look at the stereotypical president of a condo association. The person probably is not in a leadership role during the day, and they get on the board, or at least my experience is, they get on the board and suddenly they become a dictator. That's not leadership. Command and control only works in a couple of situations, typically military and emergency situations. 98% of the time, 99% of the time, it doesn't work. It has to be collaborative. But as leaders, we have to learn these things. Is there really a leadership school? Is there a leadership class? I don't think so. I think it's having these conversations is how we figure it out. We look at who are the best leaders we can see are and try to emulate them. And we look at the worst leaders and what do we learn from them? What not to do? Well, he does it and it's not working, so let's not do that. I think that's life in general.
But I think your examples just now actually are good examples of leadership because a good leader understands what needs to happen in what situations. And so you said in an emergency situation you may need to act one way. We've been having roof work done and the board went through a process to determine the who, the when, the why. But if the roof had caved in, we would have needed to make potentially a different decision much more quickly. And a good leader recognizes what action needs to be taken when to meet the environmental demands.
Yes, and if they build up their emotional bank account, no one argues when you made the snap decision and made it happen. Imagine the fire chief pulling up in the fire truck, you live in an apartment building on the 8th floor and your building's burning. And the fire chief pulls up and says, well, it's 20 degrees out and it's snowing. Does anybody want to go up the ladder to the 8th floor? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Nobody? Okay, we're going back to the fire station. You don't want to build consensus at that point. It's you, up the ladder. You took this job, go. Please.
Yeah, I think that this idea of listening and building consensus and what the balance is for the role of the leader once a decision is made. Because generally, the decision can't, the idea that one decision over a complex issue can meet everybody's needs who's contributed to the discussion, it generally doesn't happen. So inevitably, there are people who are like, well, you didn't hear me because I said that we should do A, B, and C, and you're doing D, E, and F. And the fact of the matter is that that's where that communication comes in, and the why. The leader's job is to be able to very clearly communicate, these are the reasons why the decision was made. I heard people say this, I heard people say that. Well, I heard people say this because of this, this, and this, that isn't the way we're going. This is the way we're going because of this, this, and this. And usually that can be very effective, and it all comes down to communication and how that's shared. To say that you were only heard if they do exactly what you say, that isn't actually the definition of being heard. I took it into account. These are the reasons why that isn't the way we went.
But if it's done well, as you say, then at least everybody involved should feel like they've been heard, even if you essentially vote differently or decide differently than they want. There's, 30 people in the room, whatever it happens to be. If we decided on a project and everyone agreed unanimously, we made the wrong decision. there's something wrong. If everyone agrees, there's something wrong with the decision. There should be a dissenting voice going, well, you know, I think because we're all different, we have to take those fun things into account.
I think there's also something to the point of establishing the ground rules with the group at the very beginning. You know, once you've got your team, once you know who's, you know, the right skill sets for whatever the tasks are at hand, part of the you know, upfront work that the leader needs to do in the consensus building is establish some rules as far as, we're going to discuss this, we're going to listen to people's input, we're going to make a decision for whatever reason, we're going to go this way versus that way, to your example. But at the end of it, we're all on this committee, we're all going to support whatever the final decision is going to be, and we're all going to work towards that. You know, just because your idea wasn't heard doesn't mean that now you're not going to do any work, right? So a lot of it, and that gets back to communication, a lot of it is letting people know the upfront expectations and how we value what they're bringing to the group, and we need to utilize them throughout the life of the project, even though, you know, there's ups and downs as people's, you know, level of commitment, you know.
All voices will be heard, not necessarily followed, but they'll all be heard. So I think the next thing on your agenda is for you to get into your groups and talk about your presentations. I'd like to share with you just 2 minutes on the idea of presentations. I'm from Milwaukee. I was born in Milwaukee. For some people, that's one of the northern suburbs. Milwaukee's famous for 3 things: Harley-Davidson's, beer, and an airport named after a guy who was court-martialed for his poor communication skills. So which do you think I want to talk about? Yeah, I'd like to talk about the beer, but we're going to talk about Billy Mitchell, the guy who was court-martialed for his poor communication skills. Come back with me to 1925, where Billy Mitchell's convinced that future wars are going to be won not on the ground, but in the sky. In support of his ideas, he gathered the Army's top generals together, and he told the generals 3 things. He said, you don't need troops, you need a lot of airplanes, and those airplanes should be under the control of an independent Air Force separate from the Army and the Navy. Generals get their prestige and prominence by 2 things: their troop strength and winning battles. In 25, we weren't actively at war, so there were no battles to be won. And this guy comes along and says, you know what, we don't need troops, and we want to make you one of 3 military branches instead of one of 2. Obviously, his talk did not go well. Mitchell needed to be cognizant of the beliefs, the perceptions, the ideals of his audience. And then he needed to tailor his message to make his message more palatable and persuasive. Mitchell's not stupid. He learned this lesson not long after he gathered all the Navy admirals. And he told the admirals that in order to get enough planes in the sky at one time to be effective, they were going to have to build really big ships. Now, admirals get their prestige not from their troop strength, but from the number of ships in their fleet and the size of those ships. So the admirals were much more interested in what he had to say. It was really the same message. It was just molded to his audience. Unfortunately, by then, Mitchell had alienated so many people that he was court-martialed. And to follow his advice, career suicide. Had Mitchell been able to better tailor his message to an audience, the world would be a much better place. Mitchell would have avoided the disgrace of court-martial, and we would have avoided the attack on Pearl Harbor. Because Mitchell predicted the attack on Pearl Harbor 15 years before it occurred. It was in his book called Wing Defense. The problem is his book came out during his court-martial. So the publicity surrounding his court-martial overshadowed the book's release. Nobody read it. But Mitchell's ideas were finally appreciated and adapted. In 1942, 6 years after Mitchell's death, he was posthumously elevated to the rank of Major General. In 1946, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, and in 1947, the U.S. Air Force was officially recognized as an independent branch of the military. What's the point of the Mitchell story? That if you appropriately adapt your message and make it persuasive to your audience, you won't have to wait until after you're dead to get your message through. So that being said, let's go on to the next section of your agenda. Julie.
Yeah, we're going to take a look. back here at 8:45. And what do we have, 5 groups, right? Yeah. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pick a table. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And get in your groups and we'll give you a little bit more instruction.